I had to fly to Nebraska for a special hearing on the child's education in order to get him transferred to a regular class. The school district wanted to keep him in a segregated class for children with severe autism, but we were able to get him transferred into a regular second-grade classroom. When he entered that class, tests showed that his educational progress was lagging years behind that of the children who had been in a regular class all along. However, in less than 2 years, new tests showed that he had caught up with his classmates in many ways. His mother reported that he blossomed in the second grade, and subsequent testing bears this out. He still needed special help to learn, but it was clear that the regular class was a much better early intervention. In short, the 2 years of the wrong kind of early intervention clearly held back his progress, but getting the right intervention resulted in dramatic progress. Not all children may be that fortunate, especially if the incorrect early intervention is prolonged. This clinical impression was confirmed by a scientific review of early intervention that appeared in the prestigious medical journal Pediatrics. The authors reviewed the literature on early intervention and concluded the strength of the evidence overall to support early intervention ranged from insufficient to low. How can this possibly be? After all, everyone knows that early intervention works. But knowing and proving are not the same thing. An example from medicine illustrates this point. Meningitis is a serious illness arising from inflammation of the membrane surrounding the brain and spinal cord. Bacterial meningitis is particularly dangerous and can result in death, permanent cognitive impairment, seizures, and/or hearing loss. Early intervention is crucial for reducing the risk of these complications. The primary symptoms are fever and headache. Fortunately, meningitis can be diagnosed using a medical test that can detect the bacteria causing the illness. But imagine what would happen if all patients with a headache and a fever were placed on a meningitis spectrum. Attempts to test the effectiveness of early intervention would be confounded by this overly broad definition. Taking aspirin or even doing nothing would have a high cure rate for the meningitis spectrum, but would do nothing for the patients on the more severe end of the spectrum who actually have meningitis. One cannot help but wonder whether this is happening with the expansion of the autism spectrum. Another late-talking little boy was brought to me from New York because he had been diagnosed as having autism. My testing showed that was not true, but the people who had diagnosed him back in New York could not be convinced. When the boy began to walk on his toes and to bite his hand, they felt this was proof they were right, because toe walking and self-injuring are things many children with autism do. When his mother informed me of what he was doing, I immediately suggested that she take him to a specialist in self-injuries and to a neurologist. Perfectly normal people sometimes deliberately cause themselves pain, such as by biting their lip, to mask some other pain they are feeling. Moreover, problems in the brain other than autism can cause both pain and toe walking. The neurologist discovered that this little boy had a brain tumor, and he was operated on to remove it. The neurologist told his mother that her son could have died within a year if the tumor had not been discovered. One of the many problems with false diagnoses is that those who have made such diagnoses can become wedded to their conclusions, and subsequently interpret whatever the child does within the framework of their diagnosis, ignoring other possibilities that need to be considered and tested. This little boy needed early intervention for a brain tumor, but the incorrect diagnosis he had received for autism was the biggest obstacle to his being tested for other possibilities. After children have a label like intellectual disabilities or autism put on them, parents as well as others who deal with them can come to view them differently and to behave toward them differently than they would toward other children. Not only does that disrupt the natural development of the early parent-child relationship, it makes many parents more willing to hand their children over to strangers who claim to know what's best, but who can't have the same devotion parents have to their own child. When children are late in beginning to speak, many people begin to scrutinize their every action, seeing symptoms and red flags of something wrong in things that might otherwise be seen as typical of the odd things toddlers often do, which are regarded as cute when the child is not a late talker. As an example, one little preschooler that I was treating for his speech delay liked to pick fuzz off a carpet and play with it. A psychologist said that this was one of the signs of autism.